Welcome back. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at char data types. What is a char data type? Char data type is a data type that holds one character, either it being a letter, a number, or a special character. For example, we have here A, we have here W2 hash. So this A is just a character, W is just a character, likewise 2 and hash. So a char data type holds one character. You can't add AB making it 2 characters. No, it can only hold one character. That is what a char data type is. Now let's look at how we can declare a char data type and also initialize it and print it to the screen. Right now I'm using the V on my Windows, the V editor on my Windows. Let's proceed with the char data type. We call the data type char, then the name of the variable that we want, which is name. We can also initialize it as well. Okay, and let's call another data type char, and then we now call it character. Let me put character, then I now put in here A. So this is how to declare and initialize a character. It has a single alphabet inside, a single character inside. It cannot contain 2 characters. This is an invalid value for the type char. So a char has just a character as its value. Having said that, let's go on and print a char. And using this function printf, as I told you before, this printf has some parameters. Now, in the previous video, we used an I for integer, D, or we also used D for integers. Then we now use F for float and double. When you are trying to print a char, we have to use a C to print a char. Okay, so this is how to do it. Remember the last video, I inserted these 2 quotation marks. Then inside of these 2 quotation marks, I inserted this percentage sign. Now, here right now, we are trying to print char. Assuming we are trying to print an integer, we will put an I. Okay, or if you are trying to print a float, we put an F. Okay, but we are trying to print a char, which is we are going to put a C. Outside of these inverted commas, we put our variable name that we want to print. We want to print just the name. Okay, so when we run this our code, Q is going to come out. Now let's save and run this code. Let's save and run the code. So we have saved the code. If you haven't watched my video on how to set up your environments and how to use the terminal to run your C program, I will suggest you go back and watch the video. Now moving forward, we have saved our program. There is now time for us to run it. Okay, now remember that you need to be on the part of your program, your project. You need to be inside of it. So my project is located inside the document, then inside the folder called C programming. Then this is my project folder, and inside this my project folder you will see my main.c. You can see my main.c here. Okay, so I'm inside of my project folder. Now for us to run this code, we need to use the compiler called gcc. Now we now specify it gcc, then the main.c, which is our file, then -o, then the main. This can be any name. It can be, let me just rename it. Let me rename this so that it will not be the same as our file name. Now let me just give it m.exe. It is very compulsory, a must, that you must end it with .exe. Okay, so when you have done that, just click your enter key, then you now reference this name. So you are compiling this main.c to be an executable file. So you can actually run this file right now. You can actually run this file as an application, just like when you download the application that you want to install on your desktop computer. You just need to double click it and it will start running. So this is what this gcc did for us. It compiled this our C file and then gave us an executable application. So let us run it. Now we run it by referencing just the m.exe. Okay, we click the enter key. You can see it gave us Q, which is what we printed out. Now let's go back to our V. Now remember that we have two variables here and we initialize them. Now let us try to print two of these together. Okay, it's possible. Remember I told you in my previous video that printf has so many parameters that we can actually use to format our data. Now this full meaning, this printf, the full meaning is print format. This f here is an abbreviation to format. So this printf functions formats our data in a way that we want our program or our output to look. So let's continue. Now we want to add this character as one of the parameters that we want to print. So we want to print two variables at the same time. You can print 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, as many variables as you want at the same time on a go. For us to achieve that, we now come inside this double quotation marks. Inside of it, then we now declare another percentage sign. At the end of it, you now put C. Why? Because we are still printing char. Assuming we are printing something else, or an integer, we put an I, or a float, we put an F, but we are still printing char, so we need to put a C. Now going back between this C and in the middle of this percentage C and this percentage C, at the middle of it, you put a new line character. They call this new line character. What it does is it breaks the first line and then shifts down to the next line. So this first C is going to print at the first line. The second C is going to print at the second line. So it shifts this second C down the first C. Now let us put this new character. After putting this, you go to at the front of name, depending on how you want to arrange the printout. Now I want to put the name first, then I will now put the character second. Now I now type the character. Now what this says is that this name will be assigned to this first C. The second parameter here, which is, or the third parameter, because from here to here is the first parameter of the printf function. The second parameter here is this, the name, and the third parameter is this character. Later on, when we'll be dealing with functions, I will explain in details what these parameter or arguments are all about. Now, as I was saying, this name is for this first C and this character is for this second C. Now let's save our program. And let's run our program. I think let me still maintain the M, so everything worked fine. Then now you can see that the first, which is the Q, was printed out. Then it did not continue on the same line because of that backward slash N, the new character that we inserted. It now went to go and print A at the next line. So that is how to print a char on the screen. Let's move into our V. Now this is how to declare a char and initialize it. If you don't want to initialize it at a go, you can declare it and then initialize it, but you should first of all declare it before initializing it. If you initialize it before declaring it, is going to throw you an error. So that is that for char. The next data type that we are going to talk about is whenever we want to use a string in our program, we use an array for it. Only in C, because C doesn't support strings. But for you to use a string in C, it must be inside of an array, and it being inside of an array is going to have a data type of char. So for us to begin our array, for us to declare our array, we first of all give it a data type of char. Now the array, the variable that we want to store the values or the strings that we are going to give it is going to be called demo test, or you can call it anything. Let's just say demo. Then after that, you put this square brackets. After these square brackets, you can actually go ahead and initialize your variable. Now, initializing your variable is just giving your variable a name, assigning it a name. So, as I said in the previous video, this equal sign means assigning, taking this value, giving it to your variable. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, that char only stores a single character, but right now we are now giving it multiple characters. Why? Because we want to store multiple characters inside a char data type. Why is this possible? It's possible because of these square brackets. Assuming if we leave out these square brackets, then you know that it is not possible for us to save this multiple sequential collection of elements inside of this demo. It's not possible because char only stores a single element. But for us to actually store this, we have to put this square brackets, which is a representation of an array. So I'm going to show you how this works. So this is a typical representation of what our program is going to look like. For example, I gave it a name, and then I now store the name inside of this name array, and is having a char data type. Now, it might be confusing that I earlier said that a char data type stores only a single alphabet, a single letter. Okay, but right now I'm having about 6 of it storing inside of this char data type. Also, remember I said that this name is not just an ordinary name, but it has another data type called an array data type. this square brackets here donates it or represents an array. So this name is not only having a char data type but also having an array data type. Now, array data type stores similar data. For example, we have this data here. So it's storing this data in each of these blocks. So let me illustrate to you how this data is going to be stored inside this name. Okay, having a data type of char and having a name that has an array data type. The first letter, which is I, is going to be stored inside of an array. Index is going, the first letter is going to store inside of this array. Now this array is just a kind of a container that contains similar data. Now it's having a data type of char, meaning each of the slots inside of this array is going to contain just one character. For example, we declared 6 items here, IKENNA, okay, which is 6. Now automatically this name array has already created a vacuum, like a storing space of 6 in total inside of this name, inside of this array, inside of this. Okay, now it's having a data type. It will start splitting each of these letters one after the other until it occupies the whole 6 slots that has been specified or that has been created. Now when this is being assigned, it's going to look something like this. Now inside of this name has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots inside of it. Now it being a char data type, each slot will have each of these characters. So it's still obeying the rules of char, because the rules of char says that char will store just one single character. So it's still storing the single characters, but it is storing it together. It's storing those single characters together. So you should not be confusing when I said that char only stores one character, and here I'm giving it about 6 characters. Yes, I'm giving it 6 characters, but behind this name it will store each of these character in each component, that is in each box, that we are still storing each of these characters, just one of these characters. We are still storing one of these characters, but we are now storing them, all of them together in one box. So this name is just a box, okay, that has some slots, that has 6 slots inside. Now inside these 6 slots, each of these letters IKENNA has its position inside of the slots. Now it being a data type of char, we enable it to occupy each of these slots. That means the rules that guides this char has not been violated. You may be thinking about this 0. I started with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I said 6. But these letters here, or these strings here, are 6 in numbers. Yes, when you are dealing with an array in any programming language, the first element of the array, or the first data that the array has, is 0. They call this 0, index 0. The index of this first element here is 0, but in total they are 6. You can see it printed out Ike now. So guys, this is how to declare a string in C. Okay, you give it the data type of char, you declare your name, the name of the variable, then you now put this square bracket, you now initialize it. If you want to print it, you use the format S, then the name of the variable. This will print out this name for you, as you have already seen it. So next we are going to talk about arrays. Now, what is an array? An array is a kind of data structure that can store a fixed sequential collection of elements of the same type. So when you have a collection of elements, that means it's going to be like from 1 to infinity. So the collection of these elements being stored inside an array data type is a must that it must be of the same type. If it's not of the same type, it's not going to enter into the array. For example, if you are initializing an array of strings, and alongside with it you now go and put an integer or a whole number or a number at all, a decimal, a float, or an integer, anyone, is not going to accept it. The array is not going to accept it. Why? Because strings and numbers are not the same thing. So array only accepts collection of sequential data or elements of the same type. I should emphasize on that, of the same type. So if you are putting an integer or numbers, all the collections should be of numbers, it being integer, double, or float. It must be numbers. You can't put strings inside number, or number inside strings in array. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so let us go and look at how to declare an array. So let us declare an array of integers. Now, for us to do that, we have to declare the data type int first. Then the variable name that we want to use, numbers as the variable name. Then after that, we will now put this square brackets. It's optional if you want to put the size. Okay, it's optional for you to put the size or not to put the size. But if you want to put the size, just be sure that the value is not going to exceed the size. This 5 here is called the size of the array. So this number here now is going to create 5 slots. Okay, starting from 0 to 4. Okay, now make sure that the value during the runtime of your program doesn't exceed this number that you are putting here. Okay, in array, they have two types of arrays. We have the single array and the multiple array. That is the single dimension array and multiple dimension array. In array, we have single dimension and multiple dimension arrays. Right now, we'll be dealing with single dimension arrays. So later in our program, we can now move into multiple dimension arrays. So this is how we declare a fixed size of 5 in our array. Let's go to another variable. We declare its age. Now this age here right now, or let me just put it random number. So this random number is not going to have any fixed number inside. Okay, now we now come here and initialize assignment. Let's assign, what is wrong with my typing? Assignments. Now we want to assign numbers first. We can also assign random first, it doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that we have already declared it, so we can do whatever we want to do with it. Now assigning an array, we need to put this curl bracelets first before any other thing. Now we put the values that we want to be inside of the array. So right now we are dealing with numbers. That is why we are putting numbers throughout. Okay, remember the definition of an array. It doesn't accept a different data type. Right now we are putting numbers. Okay, it should totally be numbers. But if you now went and put a string like this, it doesn't follow. It will throw an error because this string here and this number, they are not of the same type. Okay, and also we are using an int data type, so everything here should be an integer. So let's delete the strings that we put here. Then after that, let's count this, our elements here. These are called elements. The values inside of an array are called elements. Now we count starting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's count from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see it corresponds to our fixed size of our number variable. Then at the back of it, definitely you need to terminate it. Okay, then we now come to the random. And then do the same thing. But right now the random doesn't have fixed size. We can do whatever we want to do with it. Oops. Okay. So we can do whatever we want to do with it. So you can see how good or how advisable for you to use non-fixed size. Okay, so during the runtime of your program, if there is any kind of change in your value, like your data started expanding, good for your array to grow with your data. Okay, so now let us go and print this out to the screen. Inside our print function, as usual, we put our we put our percentage sign. Now remember, we are printing integers. Okay, then we now put I. Now outside of this inverted commas, then we now put our comma. Now let's print numbers first. So We now save this our program. We save and quit. Then we now compile it. Whoa, random. Yeah, we got that error because in array has its own specific rules. Okay, remember what I said about syntax. Okay, now the syntax for you to initialize and declare and initialize an array is this. Now you can see all these numbers here right now. We have to remove them. Okay, we have to remove all here right now. Now in array, it needs to be initialized directly. Unlike other data types, we need to initialize, then we can also we need to declare, then later initialize. But in array, we need to first of all give it a size, okay, and also initialize it if we do not give it a size. It's either two ways. So let us go start from the numbers, then we now give it values of this. Okay, then this one we don't need to give it a size. Okay, but these values that we are going to put here is going to give it a size automatically. So this should run perfectly now. So we are still printing numbers, so we are still printing this first one. Let's save what we have just updated. Then we now write this, we quit. Then let me clear the screen first. Clear the screen. Then let's compile our program. We did not get any error, so let's run our program. Okay, you can see it gave us 642220116. Let's go to a text edit. Okay guys, it's as if my head is full. For you to print an array to the screen, we need to loop it. For you to print all the elements of an array to the screen, we need to loop through it. So let's loop through this array of numbers. Now we now go out at the top of the print statement. Then we now use our for loop. If you do not understand this, just don't worry. Just watch what I'm doing, and I will explain to my best of knowledge for you to understand. Now I put for, then int. We declare another variable inside the for loop. Then we say I is equal to 0. Okay, then I now say I is less than or equal to 5. So we are printing this guy here right now. You can see that we gave it a fixed size of 5. So while my I is 0, and if I is less than 5, which is true, so what will happen? I should increase. So if I increases, what will happen? It is going to print out the first I, which is 0, and then I will now be 1. Okay, so let us run this. I will still come back to explain. Let's run this first so that you see what is happening, then you can now know what is actually happening. Then you now put what are we printing? Integers. So we now put numbers here. Numbers. Now inside this number is where we will put our I. Now let's run this. Let's save, then run this. Now run. Okay, let's compile this. No errors. Then let's run. Now you can see it brought out 0954320. Let's go to our vim. Then you can see 0954320. Where did it get the 0? Okay, 094. Okay, let's just continue. Now what this does is, this for loop is an iterator. It loops, like it continues executing our program if the condition is true. If the condition is true, it continues printing out whatever we said it should print here. But immediately the condition is false, it stops. Now, for example, I declared a variable here called I, and it's an integer, so it's going to have a 0. Now, this 0 is my initial startup, like where it should start counting. Now, when dealing with an array, remember I said the first element of an array is 0. Now, coming to here, I said if this I, which is 0, so if this is 0, which is actually 0, this I here is 0 because I have declared it to be 0 here. So when it comes here, it's going to be 0. So if 0 is less than 5 or equal to 5, which is true, okay, because 0 is less than and or equal to 5, which is true. So if it is true, then I should be incremented by 1. All these things, just forget about it. We will still come to these operators and conditional loops and all those things. Now, if this is true, I should be incremented by 1. But before I will be incremented by 1, this 0 would have been passed to this I here. So just look at my mouse. Just look at my mouse. It will go like this. The first run will go like this. Pass here. This I will be incremented by 1. But this 0 has been passed to this 1 before this I will be incremented by 1. So this 0 here this I here will be 0 at the first run. So when you run this at first, it's going to be number 0. So numbers inside this bracket is going to be 0, which means this first element here is going to be printed out. Now, after printing this first element, it goes back again to this for loop, and it doesn't go to this guy again, but it goes to this one here. It checks whether I is still less than or equal to 5. Yes, remember the initial time it went, it's incremented by 1. So here is going to be 1. So 1 is still less than equal to 5. So it will now transfer this 1 here. It will now increment again. Now when it transfer this 1 here, this second element here, which is 9, is going to be printed out. So when this guy is being printed out, it will now increment by 1. Now this one here, this one here and this one here has now become 2 because it went 2 times. It went here 2 times. Now when it gets to, when it goes to another round, it will come here. Now this one here now is now 2. Now it will now ask if 2 is less than or equal to 5. Now if it is false, which is not the case, which is true, okay, so that 2 will be transferred to this guy here right now, to this I here right now. So remember, the first one is 0, the second one is 1, the third one is 2. So this 54 is going to be printed out. Now if this 54 has been printed out, it will increment by 1 again. So it will now carry the 1, go back again to this guy. I say, okay, is 3 greater or less than, so this is how it's going to be iterating until this I becomes 5. That is how our program is going to terminate, or that is how our program is going to stop.